Hello everyone, my name is Katie Carson and I am the Duchess of Suds here at Royalty Soaps. I want to congratulate you on becoming a Soap Frosting Club member. I hope you had a lot of fun unboxing your package. We worked really hard on it and I'm super proud of its contents. Now before we get started soap making, I want to discuss a couple of things with you. When you purchased the soap frosting kit, you should have received a digital download for the PDF that accompanies the kit. I would highly recommend that you go ahead and print out that PDF, especially if you are going to be recreating the exact recipes that I will be making in this video. Once again, this kit is intended for intermediate to advanced soap makers. So we're not going to be discussing basic terms such as saponification, trace, stick blending, lye water solution, and oils. That's stuff you guys should already know. And by the way, it should be obvious that you should be wearing proper safety gear, including sleek pants that cover your entire leg, long sleeves that will protect your wrist, nitrile gloves to protect your wee fingies, fashionable eyewear to both protect your peepers and intimidate your enemies. And of course, if you plan on giving these soaps to family or friends, or even selling them in the future, I would highly request a hairnet because it's gross to have hairs in your soap, you know what I'm saying?
Hairy soap, ew!
And by the way, Royalty Soaps is only responsible for the soap we make on our premises. So you, the purchaser of the kit, are responsible for your own safety, your own good manufacturing practices, and the quality of the products that you sell and give away. So be safe, be smart, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Let's make some soap. So, whenever you receive your Soap Frosting Club box, it should look a little something like this. Our video today will be split into 3 different parts: a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced piping project. We will, of course, start with the beginner version, so we're going to be using Tickled Pink from Mad Micah's. This is a really vibrant pink. We will be using one or both of the glitter spritzers. That's up to you. We'll be using 2 of the mixing cups, 2 of the pipettes, the large coupler, 1 of the piping bags, and the most versatile tip I've ever used, the Atico 869 tip. It's my absolute favorite. I have prepped my oil blend and my lye water solution according to the instructions in the PDF. Our oils are at 85 degrees Fahrenheit and our lye water solution is at room temperature, which for me is about 78 degrees. I'm going to pour our lye water solution into our oils, never the other way around, of course. And we are going to blend it up using our pink stick blender for about 10 seconds or so. With a batch this small, it doesn't need long for blending. It was exactly 10 seconds, by the way. Because today is our beginner soap, I don't want to overwhelm you guys with the inside of the batch. So we're going to do a very simple 1 color in the pot swirl. I am pouring off 8 ounces of my soap batter, give or take. Mine is actually a little closer to 8.5. To the larger pitcher, I am adding 1 tablespoon of titanium dioxide mixed with 1 tablespoon of warm water. And to the smaller container, I am adding 1/4 of a teaspoon of Tickled Pink Neon Color from Mad Micah's. This Tickled Pink is going to be so vibrant. I'm going to blend this in real quick with my stick blender, probably 5 to 7 seconds. I have in this biodegradable corn cup 2 ounces of raspberry lemonade fragrance oil. This is from Nature's Garden. Into the pink container, I am adding 0.5 ounces of fragrance oil, and the rest will go into the white. I'm going to stir the fragrance oil in by hand. This is going to help keep my soap nice and fluid. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. I typically like to stir in by hand about 20 seconds just to make sure that everybody has snuggled up close and bonded. Give our pink a little swirl. Now it's time to do the ITP swirl. Now this is something you get to use your creativity on. I like to pour my accent color in a clockwise direction and then go into the middle. But you can do zigzags, you can do straight into the middle, you can do 2 lines. It's whatever you would like to do. I will now scrapey out my little container, and we are going to pour it into our perfect purple mold. I thought it would be cool to do an in the pot swirl on an incline today. It's a really easy way to jazz up your soap. So using one of the corn cups in your Soap Frosting Club kit, I'm going to prop up my mold, and then I'm going to pour it down the side here. I'm just letting the mold break the fall of the soap. This will keep the lines really vivid, as you guys can probably see. Just gonna tap that down a little bit and keep pouring. And once again, tap it down a little bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and let this fall. I'm still gonna continue to pour on the same side I was pouring before. I am going to scrapey out my white pitcher container. Let's tap this down real quick. All right, and see how easy that was? The base of your frosted soap is already complete, and we can move along to prepping our soap frosting. Before we mix up our soap frosting, let's go ahead and prep the piping bag. I have my large coupler, my tip, my bag, and a pair of scissors. The first thing you're going to do is put the tube part of the coupler into the bag, push it all the way into the corner, and then snip off the excess of the bag here so that it has a nice opening. We're going to put on our piping tip and screw on the top of the coupler. This will keep the tip from moving, and if you ever wanted to, would let you easily interchange this tip for another one if you have 2 different types of piping on your soap. You're then going to roll down the bag until it can fit comfortably over your hand, which for me is about halfway. We are working with small batches of piping to begin with so that you guys can get the hang of it. So it won't fill up the bag all the way and will probably sit comfortably around this area anyway. We're gonna set this off to the side, and now we can mix up our soap frosting. I have prepared both the oil blend and the lye water solution according to the instructions in the PDF. And both of them are now sitting at the proper temperature, with the oils being around 85 degrees and the lye water solution being at room temperature, which once again for me is about 78 degrees or so. I want to make this first soap frosting patch pink. It must be pink. And ideally, I would like it to match the inside of the soap. This is 15.5 ounces of oils, so I'm going to go ahead and put in half a teaspoon of tickled pink. We will blend this in first and then add the lye water solution as we're mixing. This gets it past thin trace and immediately into about medium trace. As it continues to set up, I will show you guys the various stages of soap frosting thickness, and we'll share with you some tips and techniques on how to identify the perfect frosting consistency. This soap has been sitting for about 3 or 4 minutes. So this is sort of the first stage that I see a lot of people trying to pipe at. And you guys, this is still too runny to try to pipe. One of the ways I know is because if I give this a wiggle, that soap be jiggling in there. You see that? See all that jiggle? It's not firm enough yet. Also, if I move it to the side, all the soap falls down and it won't hold its shape. It won't hold a stiff peak. So we need to wait 3 or 4 more minutes and let it thicken up a little bit more. Okay guys, this is looking a little more like it. You see how when I push the soap, it's holding its shape on the sides and is making a very stiff peak up here. Also, if I jiggle it, it moves, of course, but it's not moving the entire soap amount in the container. It's just giving a little jiggle on the top there. This is how you know you are ready to go. So I've got my hand in the piping bag. It's completely open on the inside. I am holding the edge of the bowl with my finger just so that I can give it a little stability when I'm scooping stuff out. I'm going to lift it in and scrape my spatula on the side of the piping bag. I've got it mostly loaded, but I need to scrape out my little container. So I'm going to pull this up just a little so nobody spills out. Want to get all that good soap frosting out of there. Once again, go in for that edge, clean off my spatula. I'm going to roll down my bag, and again, because it's so stiff, nothing should be moving in there. Another good way to test is to hold your bag, preferably over your container. If nothing's dripping out, it's thick enough. Gonna make sure there's no air on the sides just by squeezing my little fingers. Then I'm going to give it a quick twist. And that's it, your soap frosting is ready to be used. We're going to frost the top today using the 3-2-1 method. We're gonna put 3 little dollops on the bottom row, 2 dollops on the second row, and 1 dollop on the very tippy top. I'm holding my piping bag about 1/2 inch away from the soap. That's what's going to give you these nice round dollops. If you hold it a little too close to the soap, you'll just end up with a flatter design. We brought you in a little closer so you can see just how far away I'm holding my piping tip from the soap loaf. And if this is your very first time piping, it might help you honestly to get down on eye level with your soap, so you can see just how tall you need to pipe it and how far away you need to be holding your piping bag. This was one of the best ways that I learned whenever I was doing this years ago. And don't worry if your soap frosting doesn't look as perfect as mine does right now. Remember, I have years and years and years of experience, almost 10 years in fact at this point. So they're not gonna look this even probably, and that's okay because whenever you cut the bars, they're still gonna look fabulous. Also, my frosting is at the perfect consistency, which is another reason why we're getting very lovely ridges, and the soap is coming out in a nice uniform way. So now we're going on to the 2 layer where we're only going to put 2 little dollops on top. I am trying to make them slightly smaller than the very bottom dollops because I'm bringing everything into a peak. We have 1 last layer left, and you can see my piping bag is quite empty at this point. So with my cleaned off spatula, I am just going to scrape this little bit of piping that is left down into the bottom of the bag so we don't waste anything. And let's get this top dollop on. Now the top dollop I like to make really perky. It's the cherry on top, if you will. And if you get to this very last row and think to yourself, oh no, I don't have enough piping left, that's okay. Remember, this is your first time, so give yourself some grace. Whether or not you get this very last frosting dollop on top, your soap is still gonna look super duper nice and very even using the 3-2-1 method. Now it's time to put on the optional but totally advisable glitter. I'm gonna start with Sparkle Plenty on top. Oh yes. Looks so beautiful. If you ever find that your little fairy duster clogs up, press down on the nozzle, give it a little bang on the table, and let go. Chances are it'll be unclogged again. This hollow glitter is so gorgeous. So using my glitter brush, you can get these makeup brushes anywhere, by the way. They literally have them at the dollar store. Mine is from Eco Stardust. I've picked up the glitter by gently dabbing it into the container, and I'm just going to gently tap the end of the brush so that all the glitter falls in a uniform manner. This is the best way to apply glitter that I have found thus far. And with that last little addition to the top of this soap, I'm gonna spritz it with rubbing alcohol using this container that I totally got at Walmart. We're gonna spritz this top to seal in the glitter. And that's it. Our very first frosted soap is complete. These piping bags can be cleaned and reused multiple times. My record, Kenny, I don't even think you know this, my record for reusing this piping bag was 42 times. I reused it before it finally made a hole. All of this one time dispose, throw away, nah girl, you can use this multiple times. So what you're going to do to make it last the longest is remove the coupler top and remove the piping tip. Of course, this is still raw soap batter, so make sure that you are wearing appropriate attire. You're going to have some soap left inside of the tip and some soap left inside of the coupler. Now this, you're going to put in a Walmart bag, a Target bag, some sort of disposable bag you have around. You can roll it up if you want to, tie a little knot, and put it in the same place you are letting your soap saponify. It will be a lot easier to clean the next day once this caustic soap batter has actually turned into soap. Then you can just wash it in the sink. We're gonna wait 18 to 24 hours before cutting our soap. Be sure you put it in a safe place away from animals and children for it to harden up. There is no need to insulate or cover the top. So put her to sleep and we'll see you soon. 24 hours later, and this is what the soap looks like, saponified in our little Ziploc baggie. So to clean it, I'm going to take it out. You got all that soap in there, and you're gonna turn your bag inside out. There we go. Look at all that soap in there. Using my fingers, I'm going to push out all the leftover soap. It usually comes out pretty easily. Sometimes it's a little bit tougher and you need to use like a butter knife or something. And then this can be saved if you like and mold it into shapes. Maybe you want to make some soap planets with it, a couple of embeds for your next project. And then for all the little pieces that are still left on, you're going to fill up a soap container with hot water. Make sure that all the dishes that you use for this are only used for soap making, nothing that has to do with your food. One option you have is to place your coupler and your piping bag and just let them soak in the hot water, and this will dissolve over time. But if you don't have lots of couplers, you don't have lots of piping tips, and you're ready to move on to your next project, you'll take a scrubby brush or sponge, once again only used for soap making, and you'll just wash it off because it's soap now. So it's like a two-in-one already. You got your soap built into your dishes. For the piping bag, I like to stick my hand in it so it is nice and firm on the inside, and I have something sturdy in the back to scrub up against. Super clean, good as new. So what you'll do is you'll set them off somewhere safe. I like to place the piping bags on top of something tall so that they can dry straight down, and in a couple of hours they'll be good to go. Alternatively, you could also wipe them off with a tea towel. It's been 48 hours. I get a lot of questions about how to remove high tops from molds that don't have a sliding bottom, and honestly, you remove it the same way you would a soap that hasn't been frosted. This piping should be hard enough to withstand you holding it and touching it pretty good. So you'll just hold it in your hand, slide it straight out. Now we peel down the sides, peel off one end. You can see it's coming out very cleanly. So high tops that are this tall typically can't be cut facing up. You have to lay them on the side. So if you're going to use really tall embeds, that's something to remember. So I'm gonna line this up here. And this this is what your soap should look like on the inside. So I got some glycerin rivers in mine because of the fragrance oil that I chose, but honestly, it kind of looks better because it's super duper hard. It smells really nice, and of course the piping on top looks really clean. I'm also really digging how that swirl on the inside turned out, that little tilted in the pot swirl that we did. Now, if your soap doesn't have, say, a perfectly centered middle, or maybe it doesn't look super clean on the sides, that's fine, don't worry about it. This is your very first time frosting soap, and if you have soap on there, you should be proud of yourself. Soap frosting can be a little bit tricky. It requires a lot of patience. So if you gave this your very best, even if it doesn't look exactly like mine, you should be super proud of yourself. All right, so let's begin by pouring our lye water solution into our oils. We're gonna blend this up now for about 10 seconds. And then we're going to back weigh the bucket. This is a very helpful technique to use if you want even layers, or close to even anyway. I'm gonna place my white bucket that is empty onto the scale. It says 4.3 ounces. I'm gonna click tare, take the white bucket off, put my soap onto it, and we're at 46.2 ounces. So I'm going to chop that into quarters because I have 4 layers. 11.5 is what that number is divided by 4. So I'm gonna pour off 11.5 ounces into this pitcher. And then we're going to add our first color. I'm gonna be using 1 teaspoon of Blue Tide for this bottom layer. And to it, we're going to be adding half an ounce of Ocean Shores. This is a brambleberry fragrance oil. And I'm gonna blend this all in real quick with my stick blender and pour it into our mold. This is such a nice fragrance oil. So I'm gonna pour this first layer in. I'm going to completely clean out the pitcher. I got these pitchers off of Amazon, by the way. And now we're gonna move on to the next layer while this sets up. To the second layer, we're going to be adding half a teaspoon of Lettuce Entertain You and half a teaspoon of Blue Tide. I am reusing the same container that I used for the first layer because why not save dishes? It is not going to affect the finished product at all. All right, let's pour in 0.5 ounces of our fragrance oil, and we're gonna blend again with our stick blender. We have our nice sea green now. So let's pour this into our mold. Now, this first layer is not set up completely on the bottom. So this soap may puncture it, which is fine because this is supposed to represent an inside of an ocean. We're not going for perfectly flat layers here, folks. So I am going to break the fall of the soap with my spatula just because I don't want it to mix completely. This is not a drop swirl. Okay, and let's mix up layer number 3. I'm just going to pour off another 11.5 ounces now. And into this third layer, we're going to add 1/4 of a teaspoon of Blue Tide and 3/4 of a teaspoon of Lettuce Entertain You. We'll go ahead and add our half an ounce of fragrance oil and blend it all up with our stick blender. So we've got a slightly more green color going on to the top now. Still a little bit of blue in there though. All right, got that last little bit in there, so it's time to mix up the final layer. Because this is the last layer, I don't have to measure anything. I do have to measure out the Blue Tide though. We're gonna be adding 1/4 of a teaspoon. So let's blend that up with our stick blender. Let's go ahead and pour our final layer in. And hey, this soap comes to trace really slowly and it doesn't thicken up on you if you use this fragrance oil. So if you would like to texture your layers, you could definitely do so. And you could even add in some mica lines, maybe gold or blue. Maybe you want to add some additives like an apricot seed or make the bottom layer a sandy color. This is your soap to customize as you like. So now that I have scraped out my container, I'm going to tap this top layer just a little bit. We are going to let this sit for 18 to 24 hours and then we will come back tomorrow, make our soap frosting then, and frost some cut bars. It has been 48 hours. We've unmolded our base soap. It's looking super, super nice. So I'm gonna line it up with my multi-bar cutter. If you don't have a multi-bar cutter, you can use a single bar cutter or you can use a cheese cutter. I know lots of people who make really big batches and still prefer to use a cheese slicer. No shame in that. All right, so let's take out the bars. They're gonna look a little something like this on the inside. And then the next thing that we're going to do is clean up the edges. Because we're gonna be piping on top, it's good to go ahead and clean up everything so you have a perfect slate, because you may not be able to reach all of these corners after there's frosting on top. Okay, so let's clean up these bars. I'm just gonna do 2 down the sides, and then the bottom as well. I'm not gonna worry about the top because we're gonna be frosting them, of course, so it won't matter. But yeah, it's good to have those sides cleaned up. This is kind of what we're looking for. Okay, I'm gonna put the cleaned soap off to the side and we're going to mix up our soap frosting. We're using the exact same amount of frosting oils. So to it, I am adding 1 teaspoon of Blue Tide Mica. I'm going to blend this up real quick with my stick blender. I'm going to add my lye water solution. All right, let's blend this up. After I have the initial blending done, I'm going to pour off some of my soap frosting. And I have in this small container 1/4 of a teaspoon of dry titanium dioxide. I'm going to wet it with a little bit of water. You can see it soaks it up a whole bunch, so you only need a teeny tiny bit. And then I'm going to pour that and we're going to blend that in. Now, I know what I said about the other soap frosting and what you want it to look like as far as holding peaks and not falling down whenever you push it to the side. But whenever you pipe soap that has already saponified, you play by slightly different rules because it needs to be a little more wet so that once this saponifies, it actually sticks to your finished bar. This is something that might take a little bit of practice to nail, but you can see, you pull it up, it's still holding a peak on top, but it did slide just a little in the bucket. Loading up 2-toned piping is just like loading up 1-color piping. You put some in on one side, then you put some in on the other side. And I don't mind at all if my colors blend a little bit. Typically, in my opinion, that makes your finished bars look nice and marbled. So generally speaking, I put 1 color on one side, then I'll switch, I'll put the other color on the other side, and I'll let them just fall down into the bag naturally. And I'll continue to do this until the entire piping bag is filled. Now there's a lot of different ways you can frost a soap that's already been cut, so I'm gonna show you a few of them today, and you can pick which one you like the most to do on your finish bars. The first thing we're gonna do, however, before we start piping is spritz these tops with some rubbing alcohol. This is gonna help our finished soap stick to our soap frosting. And for the first bar, we're just gonna pipe directly on top, the same way we've done the other bars. So I'm gonna put 3 across, then I'll put 2 on the top, and one more to finish it off. That way you can see soap frosting on both sides. Another way would be to pipe so that it falls slightly over the side, make it kind of look like a waterfall. Maybe you want to wait for that to set up a little, put a little more on top this way. You could also swirl the top a little bit, just like that, so it has one nice row on the very top of the bar. That looks like a frosted cupcake. You could squeeze a lot out so that it falls down the sides on both sides. This one actually looks cool whenever you put a second dollop on top that's a little smaller. Pull it in. That looks nice and frilly. And another thing you can do is pipe a flat bar. So I'm gonna spritz this with rubbing alcohol. I'm gonna put some piping right here, maybe a little bit down here. And you can change tips if you want to, so that you can have lots of different shapes. Maybe you wanna make it look like this. Have some ocean water that is a little 3D down there. Or maybe you just want to use your soap frosting as glue. You can see over here, I've picked out some underwater treasure embeds. We have some rose quartz and clear quartz that's been tumbled. We have some seaweed that I piped with leftover green soap. We have some seashells. We have some little glitter bubbles and some gemstones as well. So let's put a little dollop down here and place a seashell on it. We can then put a tiny bit on the back of this bar. You can see I'm not even squeezing. I'm just using that extra that I have sticking out of my piping bag. Maybe slide that in like so. On this side, I'm gonna put a little blue soap gem and a piece of pink rose quartz. One more piece of seaweed in on this side. So there you go, you've got sort of an underwater scene going on this one. So just get creative with it. Let your imagination take over. Experiment a little and see what you like. If you have extra piping, you can pipe them into different shapes. I did some rosettes here. I did one little dollop here, and even some snail trails over on this side. And then I just put some embeds on them like I normally would. I'm gonna add a little bit of glitter, and these can be used as regular bar soaps too. They're just in a different shape. Maybe even some little guest soaps. I'm gonna add the final touch of glitter to these bars, and then once again, we are going to wait 18 to 24 hours, place them in an area where nobody can get them because they look like completed bars, even though they're not, and they will be ready to use. It is time for the final recipe. We're gonna be making the most advanced soap today because we're going to be using the round tip and the leaf tip. Round tips to me are the most challenging because there's no ridges to cover up your mistakes. But they make really, really pretty piping. We're also going to be using some Let Us Entertain You and the Pow Pow Purple to match the Lavender Sage color scheme. Let's go ahead and pour our lye water solution into our oils. Just pouring it down the side here. And let's blend this with our stick blender for about, 10-15 seconds, just past emulsion. We're going to have two accent colors, white and green. So I'm gonna pour off 8 ounces into this container and 8 ounces into this container. For this particular soap, I did not blend up my micas with oil. When you're working in batches of this size, having them blended with oil to me is a little bit redundant unless they're a neon. So I'm gonna add in 1/4 teaspoon of Let Us Entertain You into one container and 1 teaspoon of titanium dioxide mixed with 1 teaspoon of water into this container. Into the large container, I will be adding a heaping 1/2 teaspoon of Pow Pow Purple, and we're going to blend in these colors with our stick blender for 5 to 7 seconds. I took my stick blender from the white batter and placed it into the purple. So you can see I'm adding a little bit of white to it. I took the time to go ahead and blend that in. That's gonna anchor the purple and make it a little more lavender. All right, so let's go ahead and add our fragrance oil. We're gonna be adding 0.5 ounces into the white, 0.5 ounces into the green, and the rest into the purple. I'm gonna blend in the fragrance oil by hand. It does accelerate a little bit. It is a floral, but it's really worth it, you guys, especially those of y'all who enjoy an herbaceous blend. All right, with the fragrance oil blended in, it's time to start pouring into our soap mold. I am pouring in most of the purple. We're gonna keep the drop swirl up near the top. Drop swirls are a very personal thing. If you want them to be a little thicker, then just wait a little while for your soap to set up. And if you want them to be a little thinner, pour right away. Obviously, I opted for a little bit thicker because that's my personal preference. I'm gonna tap this down, then I'm gonna scrapey all my containies. And if you want even more pizzazz in this soap, you could also put a hanger swirl through it. All right, let's tap this down once more. Perfect, and now that the base is done, we can move along to the frosting. Even though we are going to have two colors in the soap frosting, white and green, we're not adding either one of them to the lye water solution or the oils. Instead, we are simply gonna pour the lye water solution directly into the oils and we'll color later on after mixing. So let's blend this up for about 15 seconds just to get it properly emulsified. Now it's time to split off the batch. We're going to use this little cup here. I'm pouring off some of my soap batter right at 2.5 ounces. This little cup will be used to make the leaves. I always make a little bit too much just in case. It is far better to have too much than too little. We're adding 1/4 of a teaspoon of Let Us Entertain You, but we're not going to mix it up right now because as soon as you add the color, it will start to thicken, and we want this to stay runnier so that we have plenty of time to work with the other soap frosting. To the larger amount, we are adding 1 teaspoon of titanium dioxide mixed with warm water. So let's blend up this white. We're going in once again with our 3, 2, 1 method. Now for round piping, this really is just something that you will get better at with time. I could give you as many tips as possible, but you're gonna have to get your hands dirty and experiment a little bit with your piping tip. Having a firmer consistency will help you maintain the integrity of the shape, and holding it slightly higher than you do your other 2 tips will also help create a very rounded appearance because you're not squashing it down with your piping tip. Let's go in for dollop number 2. I'm squeezing a little bit more than I normally do because I am putting embeds on top of this soap. They are, of course, optional, but I will be giving you guys some links to them in both the PDF and the description box of this video. And it's time to go in for the final layer. Now you notice I spaced these a little bit. There's a nice big line right down the middle. Once again, this is because I'm putting embeds on top of this soap. And I want them to have a nice flat cushion to sit on. So I'm sort of filling it in a little bit with the remainder of my soap frosting here, letting it spill out into the other bars and a little bit on the edges. And the final dollop. Before I put any embeds on, I'm going to spritz the top with the fairy duster. We want that white to be nice and shiny. I want my tops to be really shiny, but you can put as much or as little as you desire. Now to place our embeds on top, we're gonna put on a dainty little lavender soap flower right in the middle of each little piped soap. It's a little bit bouncy, which makes it very, very easy to press your flower into. And I'm just going to put 1 on the top of mine, but feel free to add more if you so desire. Now for the leaves, we're actually going to do a little trick. Right here, I have a quart-size Ziploc bag. It is good to use the actual Ziploc brand. They're a little bit more durable. I'm gonna take my small coupler, place it in the tippity tip right here at the end. Go ahead and slice that tip off. That's all we need. Place on the Atico leaf. Try to screw this on the right way. And this is going to be our tiny piping bag. Pretty ugly, but also cost efficient. Now we're just gonna stir up that green, and you can see this is already pretty thick. We're not even gonna have to wait. We'll get that color in completely, and we're off to the races. Now we're just going to pour our green frosting into the bag. It's okay if it kind of gets on the edges or it's all not in one place. It's no big deal. We're actually going to seal the top of that Ziploc bag so that you can squish it around wherever you need it to go. So let's practice doing our leaves before we put it on our soap. I have here a piece of freezer paper that I've cut. Freezer paper can be gotten at Kroger, Walmart, any grocery store really. And you're going to hold your piping tip and piping bag with the little prongs facing up. So not to the side. You can see what would happen if you did it to the side. You want to hold it this way. That looks like a leaf. And having your frosting at different consistencies will create different textures of leaves. And pipe a couple of leaves so that you feel comfortable with your soap batter. I would say do a minimum of 20 or so. And hey, if you get really good at it and you like what you do, you can actually use these piped leaves later on for a different soap project that you make. I've waited for my soap to set up a little bit just so I can show you guys what it'll look like if you wait. It bunches up a lot easier because it holds its shape. So you can get some more fern type leaves this way. And you can experiment with how big you want them. Maybe you still want them to be kind of long and thin. Maybe you want to kind of bunch it up and make it short and fat. Or maybe you want some really long leaves. Once again, it's all up to you. What do you want for your project? What do you think looks good? The first thing you want to do when piping a leaf onto a flower is make sure that all the soap touches the flower itself before you pull. So you can see where I first started piping, all of that base of the leaf is touching the flower. So it's not going to fall off when people are using the soap. It's gripping really tightly to the soap that's already there. I'm squeezing and then pulling. And I'm not squeezing at all when I pull. I squeeze once, no more squeezing, and pull. That's what makes the nice pointy shape there at the end. Now again, this is just the way I like my leaves. Maybe you don't want it so pointy at the end. Maybe you want it a little more roundy. This is going to be something that you should experiment with and find out your own personal preferences. I'm gonna knock this tip down so that my leaf lays flat. And not every single leaf is going to be perfect, but you know what? Leaves in real life aren't the same either. So you're really just making a more accurate portrayal of nature. And this is it. You guys have completed your final soap frosting training and your advanced soap looks lovely. So we're gonna wait 18 to 24 hours, just like we have with all of the soaps in this series, and then we'll come back and take a look at the inside. So here we are, 48 hours later. Look at that lovely shade of green the Let Us Entertain You has turned. So we are going to place the soap on its side. Now this one, it's very important to line it up properly because you don't want to cut any of your little flowers. We're gonna have one little bar there on the end. All right, let's pull a bar out of the middle. This is what it looks like on the inside. Now, if you have little bumps on the surface like I do, don't worry. That's just what happens sometimes whenever you cut using a wire cutter. Oh, look at the tops of these. They're so pretty, and the shimmer really adds a lot to it. This is what the unclean edges of the bars look like. They're really rustic looking, but don't forget, you can always just take a potato peeler, run it down the sides, and you'll get nice smooth edges. That's a little more my style. And that's how you do a round tip, leaf tip, and a single embed on top. It's a little more advanced, but it really is worth it once you get the hang of it. Congratulations, you have made it to the very end of the soap frosting video. I hope you've learned a lot and that you found this very, very helpful. Once again, you have all the tools now that you need to start frosting your very own soaps. Be sure to take a selfie wearing your soap frosting club pin, and hey, you might be featured on the Royalty Soaps Instagram. Likewise, if you're gonna be sharing your creations online, be sure to use the hashtag Soap Frosting Club Member, because I'm going to be checking out that hashtag on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and shoot, you might end up on the website. If you have any comments or questions, you can email us at support@royaltysoaps.com. There will be an email listed down in the description box in case you have any comments, questions, or concerns. I feel so privileged and honored that you chose to take the leap and trust me with your soap frosting journey. This has been such a wonderful experience and something that I have been waiting to do for years now. The fact that I get to offer an entire club membership on my own personal website, little old me, wow, I never thought I would make it here, and it's all because of you guys. So enjoy, make beautiful, beautiful art, and hey, I may see you around soon with some exclusive video content in the future. So until then, have an absolutely marvelous day, and bye for now. Meow.